This story begins with a brutal betrayal. An Suho, our protagonist, a skilled swordsman, was on his knees in front of a group of people he once called comrades. His body was trembling, and his arm showed clear signs of being poisoned. He coughed violently, his breath shallow and rough, and it didn't take long for him to realize this wasn't just any normal poison. It was something far more dangerous, possibly fatal. In front of him stood two of his teammates, and instead of helping him, they laughed. They actually found joy in watching him suffer. One of them, a warrior, sneered and said Suho should have joined their plan. But Suho had chosen a different path. He remained loyal to his duties as a public servant, stubbornly holding on to his morals instead of giving in to corruption. This team had just finished conquering one of the notorious 5 disaster gates, a place from where terrifying monsters emerged. But now, these bastards wanted to leave that gate open. They didn't want to finish the job. They wanted to make sure the monsters weren't completely wiped out, so they could return again and again. Because as long as the danger remained, so did their jobs, their influence, and their status. If the monsters were gone, the spotlight would fade, and so would their power. Suho remembered all the time he had spent with them, fighting side by side in life-threatening battles, trusting them with his life, and now they stood before him, watching him die without a shred of remorse. They justified their actions by saying Suho was the only one who had opposed the plan. Everyone else was on board. Then the archer stepped forward and casually extended his hand, offering Suho a second chance. He said that if Suho agreed to join their side, they'd let him live. But Suho wasn't a fool. How could he trust people who had just poisoned him and stood back to watch him suffer? Besides, he could already feel it. His body had been pushed beyond its limits. The poison had spread too far. There was no coming back from this. His survival was impossible. But even if he couldn't live, he could still do one thing: take at least one of these traitors down with him. With that, Suho began gathering all the energy he had left. A powerful aura erupted from him, sharp and overwhelming. A couple from the group was immediately paralyzed with fear, backing away in terror. But the woman in the group, even more frightened than the rest, tried to calm everyone down, insisting they shouldn't panic. The archer, clearly on the verge of losing control of his bladder, could tell this was bad, and then Suho moved. In a single swift motion, he charged forward. His blade slashed through the warrior's arm, and in the very next second, he beheaded the dark mage woman with deadly precision. The archer barely managed to retreat, dragging the healer with him. Their smug expressions, once full of arrogance, had completely vanished. In an instant, they were replaced by sheer horror. The healer quickly tried to save the wounded warrior, casting healing spells desperately, but nothing worked. To her shock, she realized she couldn't heal him at all. Her eyes turned to Suho. She saw something strange, something powerful. Suho was no longer just a dying man. He was overflowing with the power of will itself. And not just him, his sword had transformed too, now forged completely from that same indomitable will. It was called the Intangible Sword, a weapon born from pure determination. But that power came a cost. The energy that had kept him standing finally faded. Suho's strength gave out, and his body collapsed. He stumbled backward, falling off a cliff behind him. He dropped deep into the valleys below, disappearing from their sight, leaving behind nothing but silence. Suho slowly opened his eyes to the sound of chaos around him. There was shouting, sirens, and the distinct sound of people running. He was being carried by a firefighter, but he had no idea what was going on. His head was spinning, disoriented and foggy. Everything felt unreal, like a dream or a nightmare. The firefighter carrying him was rushing toward a designated safe zone, moving quickly through the crowded, panicked streets. Suho couldn't make sense of it first. The last thing he remembered was dying. He knew he had died. So, how was he here? Alive, confused, and being rescued. Then, something clicked. He noticed what was happening around him. A gate had opened, a presummoning gate. It had caused a dungeon outbreak. Monsters were swarming the area. More specifically, goblins. Dozens of them were running through the city, attacking anything in sight. As Suho looked around, he saw a familiar sign lying on the ground nearby. Sindorim Station. That's when it all made sense. His memories were correct. This was the exact station that had once been contaminated during a sudden gate outbreak. He had seen this happen before. Suddenly, out of nowhere, an arrow came flying through the air and struck the firefighter carrying him. The man let out a cry as he collapsed, and both he and Suho fell to the ground. The goblins were getting closer. Despite the pain, the injured firefighter looked at Suho and told him to run. But Suho didn't move. Instead of escaping, his eyes focused on the axe the firefighter had been carrying. Without hesitating, Suho grabbed it, took aim, and hurled it with all his strength at an approaching goblin. The weapon flew through the air and struck the goblin cleanly, taking it down in a single blow. And then, right in that intense moment, something strange appeared in front of Suho. Floating text, just like a digital display. It was a system window. It congratulated him on his awakening. For a second, he just stared at it, stunned. It was exactly like before, exactly as he remembered. The system asked him to choose the class he wanted to pursue. Out of reflex, his finger almost moved to select warrior. It was instinct, but then he paused. No, this time he decided to delay his selection. Suho turned his attention toward the goblins, who were now cackling wildly, their screeches echoing across the battlefield. They looked completely unbothered, laughing like lunatics, as if victory was already theirs. But Suho wasn't amused. Without wasting another second, he launched himself straight into the horde. His movements were sharp and effortless, weaving through incoming attacks like they were nothing more than a breeze. One goblin, eager to land a hit, tried to sneak up on him from the side. But the moment its eyes locked on his Suho, it froze in horror, because right in front of it, Suho had just retrieved the same axe he had hurled earlier. The goblin recognized it instantly, its face twisted in pure panic. And honestly, if goblins wore pants, that one probably would have pissed itself right there. But Suho didn't care. He wasn't here for theatrics. Before the creature could even let out a scream, Suho slashed it down in one clean motion, cutting it off before it could make the area even more disgusting than it already was. He didn't stop there. Grabbing one of the goblin's sword from the ground, he kept moving. He knew exactly what he was dealing with. Goblins were dangerous, sure, but only to beginners. To someone like him, a veteran who had seen far worse, cutting down goblins was no challenge at all. For Suho, it was easy as fuck. Suho continued slashing through the goblins, cutting them down one after another with a speed and precision that was even sharper than before. In just a few minutes, the entire wave of goblins had been completely wiped out. Ended so quickly, it almost felt unreal and illegal. As the dust settled, Suho looked down at the sword in his hands. He realized how easily he had gotten carried away. In that moment, he wasn't calm or calculating. He had acted purely on instinct and emotion. And while that raw power was useful, he knew that during times like these, what he really needed was a cool head. But then again, if he wasn't mistaken, he had been brought back to the past for a reason. This was a second chance, a rare opportunity to start everything over from scratch, and he wasn't going to waste it. Suddenly, several system windows popped up in front of him, congratulating him for mastering multiple swordsmanship skills. But just then, something else caught his attention. The firefighter nearby was staring at him, clearly curious. The way Suho had fought didn't go unnoticed, and the man couldn't help but wonder if this guy is a player. Suho simply gave a slight nod in response and turned his focus back to the system. He had made up his mind about his class selection. He would become a healer. With that decision made, Suho walked up the firefighter and politely asked if he could take a look at his injury. The man looked a bit confused. Just moments ago, he had saved Suho, and now Suho was offering to heal him. It didn't quite add up, but Suho didn't hesitate. He activated his magic healing light, and instantly, the warm glow of the spell began to take effect. In almost no time at all, the wound healed completely. The firefighter could hardly believe what he was seeing. How could Suho be a healer, when he had just watched him take down an entire goblin wave like a trained swordsman? Before the man could ask more questions, another system window appeared. It was time for Suho to select a weapon from the arsenal. He didn't even hesitate. He knew exactly what he wanted. He picked out a beginner's sword, the same one he had used before, and began preparing himself to challenge the gate ahead. This sudden determination made the firefighter a little nervous, even panicked. The gate up ahead wasn't something to be taken lightly, but Suho had something important to rely on. He had acquired the swordsmanship talent before selecting a class. This was a key detail. Skills obtained based on innate talent could be used regardless of which class a player chose, and as the player leveled up, those skills and class skills also would continue to evolve and grow stronger. Suho recalled something. Isabella's Holy Spirit had been the top-tier upgrade of healing light. If only he'd possessed that kind of power back then, maybe things could have turned out differently. But this time, he was going to do things right. He had a clear plan. He would walk the path of both a swordsman and a healer. And as he remembered the faces of his former teammates, those scumbags who had betrayed and abandoned him, his resolve grew even stronger. He stepped closer to the gate, the one that had nearly killed him in his past life. Back then, he was weak and unprepared. But now, with the fundamentals of swordsmanship engraved in his very being, he knew he could handle it. Without a trace of hesitation, Suho began walking forward and stepped inside the gate. As Suho stepped through the entrance, he suddenly found himself standing in the middle of a dense, shadowy forest. Almost instantly, the system window appeared in front of him, displaying the name of the area, Green Red. A strange name, but there wasn't much time to think about it. After walking for a short while, Suho stumbled upon the gruesome sight of multiple goblin corpses scattered across the forest floor. Judging by their positions and expressions, it looked like they had been running from something or someone far more terrifying than themselves. Their twisted bodies suggested fear, not just defeat. That's when Suho heard something, a low guttural sound from nearby. He turned his head toward the source, and just like that, he recognized what was behind it. Two towering hobgoblins dragging along the corpse of a creature they had hunted. These weren't the weak, annoying goblins he'd seen before. Hobgoblins were a whole different beast. bigger, meaner, and more dangerous. And when they spotted Suho, their eyes lit up with excitement. To them, human meat was a rare treat. Without hesitation, they tossed their previous prey aside and pointed their jagged weapons at Suho, eager to tear into fresh flesh. But what they didn't know, what they couldn't have guessed, was that the human they were drooling over wasn't some ordinary prey. They were staring at a predator. The first hobgoblin charged forward, blade swinging fast, but it sliced nothing but air. Suho dodged it cleanly. He already knew he was underleveled for these enemies. His weapon wasn't strong enough to cut through their thick skin with ease, but he didn't need to rely on brute strength. He knew exactly where to strike. In one swift motion, he lunged straight at the first hobgoblin, aiming directly for its eye. The attack hit its mark. The creature let out a piercing screech loud enough to rattle the forest trees. Suho, ever the soft-hearted one, ended the pain of the poor monster by killing it. But Suho never intended to kill it so quickly. His attack had been too effective that it was pure habitual mistake. He had hoped to use the creature to gain skills and experience from the fight, but accidentally killed it too soon. Turning toward the remaining hobgoblin, Suho decided to make proper use of this one. The second monster, furious over its fallen comrade, roared and charged forward, swinging its weapon wildly in rage. But Suho was calm. He focused, dodging each attack with careful footwork. The hobgoblins slashed left, then right, swinging like a bitch he is, but none of its blows landed. In this world, repeating the same action over and over could eventually lead to acquiring a skill related to it. Suho knew this, and sure enough, after evading several more attacks, a small grin formed on his face. He had obtained a dodge skill, but he wasn't done yet. Now he aimed for his second skill. Suho began parrying the incoming strikes, deflecting the blows with precise timing. Parrying wasn't just a basic move. It had deep roots in weapon-based combat and served as a foundation for many other advanced skills. It was essential, and Suho wanted it. After a few more successful parries, the system finally notified him that he gained the parry skill. Unfortunately, by then, the hobgoblin had already grown tired. It staggered, breathing heavily, clearly reaching its limit. And so, just like before, Suho gave it peace, this time by swiftly beheading it. It wasn't out of cruelty, just necessity. Now, with 2 fresh skills in hand, he was ready to fight more. He wanted to face more monsters, not for the thrill of battle, but to earn skills, gather experience points, and grow stronger. Outside the gate, the atmosphere among the waiting hunters was tense and frustrated. They had just found out that someone had entered their assigned gate without permission. The moment the news spread, curses began flying left and right. Most of them were angry and felt disrespected, grumbling about how someone had the nerve to step into their territory. Some were already making plans to teach this mystery intruder a lesson once they came back out. They weren't going to let it slide that easily. Meanwhile, not far from the gate, a firefighter was in the middle of a serious conversation. He was speaking with a few men in suits, people from the Hunter Association. They had come to investigate and were specifically asking about a hunter named Suho. The firefighter didn't hold back and told them everything he knew. From what he saw, Suho wasn't just some ordinary hunter. He had wiped out a horde of zombies on his own, and even healed his wounds in the middle of the chaos. One of the officers listening to the report looked visibly surprised. He hadn't arrived late, yet somehow, by the time he got there, the goblins were already completely wiped out. And to top it off, the person responsible was supposedly a healer. He tried to brush it off at first, saying it wasn't possible. In their experience, healers didn't have the combat power to do something like this alone. But still, if this guy really managed to clear the gates solo, especially one full of goblins, then they couldn't ignore him. If he pulled it off, they would absolutely have to recruit him. Meanwhile, Suho was out in the field, busy hunting down hobgoblins and collecting experience points one after another. He moved quickly and efficiently, beheading multiple hobgoblins at once with ease. His attacks were clean, controlled. He deliberately spared one hobgoblin, letting it live. Just one glare from Suho was enough to make the monster bolt faster than Usain Bolt. But that was exactly what Suho had planned from the start. He wanted the creature to escape and bring back more of its kind. With a brief break in action, he decided to check his status. Thanks to the wave of hobgoblins he had just defeated, both his stats and skills had improved significantly. While looking at the pile of goblin corpses around him, another thought crossed his mind. There was still something useful left in those bodies. Inside the monsters, there were magic stones. These particular ones were D-grade magic stones. Nothing too rare, but each one could sell for around 50,000 won. That was more than enough reason for Suho to take the time to collect them. Under normal circumstances, he wouldn't bother with this kind of work. He didn't have the luxury to slow down. But right now, his financial situation was closer to a beggar than a hunter, so he wasn't going to let these stones go to waste. He began removing the stones from the fallen monsters one by one, carefully storing them all in his inventory. By the time he was done collecting the loot, he felt genuinely satisfied. This was a decent haul, but just as he was about to take a breath, that calm was interrupted. A sudden wave of pure killing intent hit him like a wall. When he turned to face it, about 30 hobgoblins were already approaching. Leading them was the same monster he had let go earlier, the one that had fled in terror. And now, with the confirmation, the entire group charged towards Suho all at once. But Suho didn't panic. Instead, he leapt into the air like a ninja, moving with the speed and precision of a trained assassin. Within moments, several hobgoblins had already fallen, their heads rolling across the ground. His movements were sharp and effortless, like cutting through butter. Then, as if rewarding his efforts, the system notified him that he had leveled up. New stat points were added to his profile, making him even stronger than before. With that power-up in hand and enough experience gained, Suho decided there was no need to drag things out any longer. It was time to end this. He dove straight into the mob of enemies, slashing in every direction, clearing the horde with ruthless efficiency. At one point, a hobgoblin managed to charge him head-on, aiming to strike, but instead of fear, Suho's face lit up with excitement. He wasn't worried. If anything, he looked even more thrilled than before. The boss monster in this gate was a chief hobgoblin, and it was a level 20 enemy. As expected of a boss, it came charging in first, trying to land an attack, but it failed miserably. Right after that, a group of smaller monsters tried to pull a sneak attack from behind, but Suho, without even turning fully, reacted instantly and cut them down like it was nothing. That's when the boss monster switched tactics and used one of its skills, fear. The fear skill was nasty. It paralyzed the target and pushed them into a state of pure terror. The higher the skill level, the stronger its effect. And since this was a boss monster, that alone was enough of an explanation for how it could use such a powerful mental-type skill, even inside a low-level gate. The real problem was Suho didn't have any gear or skills that could protect his mind or resist mental attacks. At the moment, he had no way to directly counter it. The boss saw this as a chance to finish the fight and charged in to claim victory. But what it didn't know was that Suho wasn't some rookie. He was a veteran hunter who'd been through situations far worse. He knew exactly how to deal with this. Without hesitation, Suho gripped his blade tighter with his left hand and deliberately cut himself. The sharp pain snapped him out of the fear-induced paralysis. The moment his mind cleared, he parried the boss's incoming strike. Then, instead of focusing on the boss right away, Suho made a quick decision. He turned his attention to the smaller monsters first. Within seconds, he moved through the battlefield, slicing down every last one of them. In just a short burst of action, he wiped out all the hobgoblins inside the gate, leaving no enemies behind except the boss itself. Before going back to face the chief hobgoblin, he took a moment to heal the wound on his left arm. Now, with the distractions gone and his body back in shape, it was just him and the boss. One-on-one, no more interruptions. And from the look on the monster's face, it didn't seem all that confident anymore. The fight between the two had begun, and they exchanged blow after blow. Suho gave it his all, swinging his sword with determination. But because of his relatively low level, none of his attacks seemed to deal any serious damage to the monster. It was becoming clear that a head-on approach wasn't going to work. Realizing this, Suho decided to change tactics. Instead of aiming blindly, he drove his sword straight into the monster's thigh, targeting a weak spot to slow it down. In response, the monster activated its fear skill once again, hoping to paralyze Suho and gain the upper hand. But this time, it didn't work. Once a person overcomes fear, it loses its grip, and Suho had already faced it once and conquered it. Now that he was no longer affected, Suho focused all his attacks on that same spot. He slashed the injured thigh over and over again, relentlessly exploiting the weakness. After a few more precise and forceful hits, the boss monster finally collapsed to the ground, barely alive, clearly on the brink of death. But Suho wasn't finished yet. Instead of going for the final blow, he suddenly used his healing light, a skill meant to restore health, and he used it on the monster. The creature, already confused and half dead, was now completely thrown off. It couldn't understand why the human who had nearly killed it was now trying to heal it. Suho, on the other hand, was delighted. He had just realized he could keep the fight going. By repeatedly attacking and healing the monster, he could extend the battle and use it as training. Some time passed in this strange cycle: attack, injure, heal, repeat. And with every round, Suho grew stronger. His skills steadily improved, and eventually he upgraded several of them to A and B ranks. Meanwhile, the boss monster, once proud and terrifying, was now covered in pure fear. It couldn't even bring itself to look at Suho anymore. Now that Suho had learned everything he could from this place, there was nothing left to gain. The monster's role in this trial was finished. It had served its purpose. With a calm expression, Suho ended it all, beheading the monster without hesitation. Just like that, the gate had been conquered. Suho stood victorious. He was declared the MVP of the gate, gaining bonus experience on top of everything else. His level had now reached 10, a significant milestone for any hunter. Even his healing skill, Healing Light, received an upgrade, advancing to E rank. And along with that, he acquired a brand new skill, Cure. It might not seem like much now, but if his skills continued to develop at this pace, It wouldn't be surprising if one day he could neutralize even 10,000 types of poisons. It was only the beginning, but the path ahead was clearly promising. With everything wrapped up, it was time to move on. Suho turned toward the exit of the gate. Outside, the atmosphere was tense. The gate had started to tremble slightly, causing people to whisper and wonder, had the gate been cleared? Then, before anyone could guess further, Suho stepped out. He walked out calmly and confidently, as if the chaos behind him didn't matter. There wasn't a hint of exhaustion or discomfort on his face, just quiet composure. People around him stared, unable to figure out who he really was, or what exactly he had done, and Suho didn't bother explaining. He simply let their curiosity grow. Soon after, multiple guilds rushed over. They had all come looking for the mysterious man who had conquered the gate alone, but Suho ignored every offer, every scout, every invitation thrown his way. He wasn't interested. Instead, he walked past them and landed right in front of a man in a formal suit. With a calm and confident tone, Suho greeted him. This man was no ordinary official. He was the team leader of the South Korean Hunter Association, Young Chulmin, and judging by the confused look on his face, he clearly wasn't expecting to be greeted by the person behind the gate's conquest. The scene shifts to the South Korean Hunter Association, where team leader Yang and Sujo were sitting across from each other. On the surface, it looked like a standard registration meeting, but Chulmin's mind was elsewhere. His thoughts kept drifting back to their earlier encounter. He remembered how they had first met, shaking hands casually, and how Suho had mentioned that he was already on his way to the Hunter Association. Anyway, at first Chulmin had assumed it was just for a license renewal, something experienced hunters did all the time. But as the conversation progressed, it became clear that Suho was actually there for initial registration. That caught Chulmin off guard. He was still trying to process how someone like Suho, who was registered as a healer of all things, had managed to clear an entire gate all by himself. And the way Suho had acted, calm, casual, munching on snacks like it was just another Tuesday. Chulmin had gone over his aptitude test results again and again. Statistically, Suho seemed more like a warrior than a healer. The numbers didn't lie. He had the physical strength and combat instincts, not to mention the composure that you'd expect from a frontline fighter. It didn't make sense. While Chulmin was lost in thought, Suho spoke up, snapping him out of it by asking if there was a problem. That brought Chulmin back to focus. He began asking Suho a few routine questions, background, education, that sort of thing. And that's when more pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. We learned that Suho was a college dropout. He had been studying physical education before quitting. Most students from that department usually chose combat classes like warrior or archer if they entered the hunter field. But Suho had gone in a different direction. He had selected the healer class, and the reason he just hated getting hurt. Then he went on to explain what had happened inside the gate. He described the sequence of events in a straightforward, almost detached way. Though he left out one key detail, the fact that it had all been far too easy for him. He simply said he fought to survive, and that was that. But when Suho casually mentioned Chief Hobgoblins, Chulmin stiffened. Something about that didn't sit right with him. Gates that produced Chief Hobgoblins weren't supposed to be easy. So Suho, noticing his discomfort, calmly opened his inventory. In the next moment, he dropped all the loot he had collected from the gate right onto the table. The items hit with a heavy thud, and Chulmin was caught completely off guard. His eyes widened in shock, and for a second, he almost panicked. These were the magic crystals Suho had collected after hunting hobgoblins. The smaller ones were from regular hobgoblins, while the larger, more refined one had come from the hobgoblin chief. Since Suho didn't really know their actual value, he politely asked the team leader if he could help get them processed. Even while trying to stay composed, Chulmin couldn't take his eyes off the loot. It was a good haul. Regaining his composure, he looked at Suho seriously and asked if he truly wanted to become a hunter. When Suho nodded, that simple agreement sparked real excitement in the team leader's eyes. Trying to steady himself again, Chulmin asked whether this decision was just made on impulse, but Suho responded with a calm smile and said, no, it wasn't impulsive at all. While Chulmin was still riding the wave of happiness from hearing Suho's answer, Suho shifted the tone slightly and began explaining his real reason. It wasn't about power or money, it was personal. He hated monsters, and he hated the gates they came from. As a child, he had lost his entire family during a gate shock. After that, he grew up in an orphanage completely alone. At first, he thought that killing monsters would help ease that deep frustration and pain inside him. But even after defeating several monsters, that knot in his chest never loosened. No matter how many he killed, the ache never went away. That's when he made a decision. He couldn't undo the past, but he could choose the kind of future he wanted to protect. He didn't want anyone else to suffer the way he did. He wanted to fight, not for revenge, but for safety, for people. He wanted to be out there on the field, doing real work. And that's why he decided to become a hunter, not for any guild, but for the South Korean Hunter Association. Chulmin was genuinely impressed by this answer, but as someone with experience, he also felt the need to explain the downsides. He told Suho honestly that the pay scale of the Hunter Association was significantly lower compared to what private guilds usually offer. But Suho didn't seem bothered by that at all. As long as he had free access to multiple gates, priority in entering them, and the authority to punish hunters who committed crimes, that was more than enough for him. Chulman could barely believe what he was hearing. You see, even though the Hunter Association technically has gate priority, they often end up auctioning those rights off to private guilds. And the reason is simple. No official wants to put their life on the line for a small government salary. Most people claim they join to help others, but the reality is, they aim for stable, safe positions where they can earn quietly without ever having to step into a gate. That's why so many aim for administrative roles instead of field duty. But in Chulman's eyes, Suho felt different. He wasn't chasing safety or comfort. He was a rare type, a true patriot, who wanted to be out on the front lines protecting people, someone who genuinely believed in civil service. The happiness was so overwhelming that for a moment, Chulman felt lightheaded, but he quickly snapped out of it and got back to the task of handling the magic crystals. Now, to take the official hunter exam, one has to first pass an aptitude test, with both a written and a practical exam. Unfortunately for Suho, this year's registration period had already ended, and the exam was scheduled for tomorrow. But fortunately for Suho, he had brother Chulman on his side. Since Suho had managed to conquer an entire gate by himself, there was a good chance they could pull some strings and get special approval from the higher-ups. That part wasn't a problem. What had concerned Chulman, though, was the written test. Clearing that with only one day of preparation almost impossible for a regular person. But Suho, being Suho, was confident. To him, if you ever get the chance to do something, you take it, no matter the circumstances. The only issue, our boy was practically a beggar at this point. He didn't even have enough money to pay the exam registration fee. So, swallowing his pride, he asked if team leader Chulman could take care of the magic crystals for him. And Chulman, being the dependable guy he is, immediately took the task without a second thought. Right now, the only person Suho could fully rely on was his big brother Chulman, and he was genuinely grateful for that. After some time, they completed all the aptitude tests. Team leader Chulman then sent Suho the money they got from selling the crystals. In the next cut, Suho was munching through Chulman's food stash like he owned the place. Thanks to the magic crystals, he received 3 million won. And on top of that, since he registered as a civil servant hunter, he also got some tax exemption benefits. Still, that wasn't enough for him. He had one more request. He had heard the association had a library, and he wanted to cram a bit for the written test tomorrow. He politely asked if the team leader could allow him access. And of course, Chulman said yes, with a smile. He even personally showed Suho the way to the library, and told him he wouldn't need an employee card to enter. Before parting ways, Chulman wished him the best of luck for the exam. Suho watched him leave, quietly, thinking how kind and reliable his brother still was. Deep down, he knew that one day Chulman would definitely become the president of the association. And with Chulman out of the picture, Suho turned his attention back to the library. His goal was clear: find something tied to his past life. He remembered major events happening, things that shook entire regions, but the details were always hazy. Human minds weren't built to carry memories across lifetimes, and he was no exception. Still, somewhere in this place was the key, a fragment of knowledge or a skill he wanted badly. After poking around a bit more, Suho finally stumbled on something strange. A book, massive, ancient-looking, and so thick it refused to fit on any shelf. Curious, he picked it up. The moment he cracked it open, the system pinged in with a strange message. The book wasn't from this world. It also mentioned that there was a special way to use it, something beyond just reading. And Suho, he already knew what that meant. Without hesitation, he held the book above his head like some RPG character, triggering a hidden quest. For a split second, he felt like a complete clown. Nothing was happening. His arms were getting tired. Frustration bubbled up fast because he was damn sure this was the only way to activate it. Then, just before he could start cursing the book, the system spoke again. The book, Library of Memories, had taken an interest in his story. That's when the magic kicked in. The book shimmered. Reality shifted, and in the blink of an eye, Suho was no longer standing in that dusty room. He now stood before a massive, otherworldly tree, its roots deep in glowing stone, its branches reaching into a sky that wasn't even real, a spiral staircase wrapped around it, leading upward into the unknown. And this is the Library of Memories. It's then revealed that the Library of Memories grants its user the ability to recall everything they've ever seen or heard, including painful or traumatic experiences. Normally, the human brain copes by forgetting, but once this ability is acquired, the user is burdened with flawless memory. The original owner of this skill was the manager of the Hexagon Guild, a former Korean Hunter Association employee. While studying in a library for a career change, she unintentionally gained this ability after using a book as a pillow just because lying face down was uncomfortable. Suho thinks about how lucky she was to stumble upon such a skill and feels grateful to her for introducing him to it. He even plans to treat her a meal one day. The system window then prompts Suho to donate his own story to the Library of Memories. He considers how powerful the ability truly is. It could help him restore every memory he's ever had, especially since human recollections tend to fade and warp over time. Realizing its value, he decides that obtaining the skill is necessary to retain every detail with precision. A message appears, confirming his story has been accepted. Suddenly, a strong wind whirls around him, and the system announces that the Library of Memories is now accessing and recording his experiences. Suho starts floating in midair, surrounded by radiant texts. As a diagram materializes above the book, another message follows, stating that the Library of Memories has officially opened. It will store everything he's seen and heard, giving him access whenever needed, while also suggesting important information. Suho stares at his hand, sensing that the recording process feels a bit off, likely because this entire space is some kind of illusion. Now that he has the skill, he decides to try it out. He closes his eyes and revisits a previous battle. There, he sees himself severely wounded. The moment floods back with vivid emotions, and he feels the fury rise in him once again, confirming the memory's intense clarity. He sees the ones who betrayed him, people he now recognizes as selfish cowards who had delayed sealing the gate just to save themselves. He swears to never forgive or forget them. His consciousness floats among countless system windows. The memory unsettles him, and he wishes he'd chosen to recall something less painful. Then, out of nowhere, one system window shows a shocking notification. He's being given a chance to become stronger. As the first person to reach the realm of the Transcendent, the system announces it's rebooting for player On Suho. He's left speechless as the world around him reverts to normal. A thought crosses his mind. Could it be that the system really sent him back in time? He remembers having once reached the state of unity with the Divine Sword and obtaining the first SS rank skill. But now, as the first to attain Transcendence, he's being given a new opportunity, something no one's ever experienced before. Suho starts to realize that his return to the past might not be just a coincidence. In the next moment, he arrives at a certain place by taxi. As he steps out, he reflects on how meaningful this second chance really is. Now he has an opportunity to prevent the disasters that once struck him and to handle the unpredictable gates that had caused countless casualties. Determined to tackle these gates faster than before, he reminds himself that every second matters. He soon arrives at a huge building Nexus. Standing before it, he's impressed by its sheer size and acknowledges that this is the biggest private hunter academy in the country. He also sees it as a place where he can make good money to secure his future. With firm resolve, he heads inside. A cheerful receptionist greets him and asks the reason for his visit. Suho responds that he wants to meet Director Kim Soo. The receptionist, surprised, asks if he has an appointment. Suho says no, but insists it's important. He simply asks her to pass along a message. The solo conqueror of the Syndrome Station pre-catastrophe gate is here. The scene shifts to the director's office, where a calm woman introduces herself as Kim Soo, the director of Nexus Academy. Suho introduces himself as On Suho. Director Kim invites him to sit and acknowledges his achievement at the Syndrome Gate. She then asks why he came to Nexus. Suho explains that he's here to apply for a scholarship. The director is clearly surprised by the request. Suho confirms it and mentions that he also plans to take the hunter license test scheduled for the next day. Still trying to wrap her head around the situation, Director Kim asks how long it's been since he awakened. Suho calmly replies, "It happened today." Shocked even further, she checks her documents and repeats in disbelief. An unregistered hunter who awakened just today wants to take the test tomorrow and has already solo cleared a catastrophic level gate. Suho confirms everything. He adds that a connection within the Hunter Association helped him secure a spot in the exam. His goal is simple: to rank first. His confident declaration leaves the director even more surprised. Then Suho states his condition. If he ranks first, he wants to be officially granted Nexus Scholarship student status with full financial support. Suho knew full well that for an unknown newcomer, reaching the top wouldn't be easy. But he wasn't some beginner. He was a battle-hardened veteran who had cleared countless gates. Whether anyone else believed him or not didn't matter. That choice was up to them. Director Kim recognized that clearing such a dangerous gate alone was no small feat. Still, she reminded him that the hunter test was a completely different matter. With an average pass rate of less than 20%, Suho made it clear if he didn't get first place, they could ignore him and cancel the scholarship deal entirely. Intrigued, Director Kim asked why he chose Nexus instead of more prestigious academies like Hexagon or Prime. Suho answered bluntly. Despite being the biggest academy, Nexus had hit a rough patch in recent years. It hadn't produced a single top-ranking student, and that had hurt its reputation and admissions. Silently, Director Kim acknowledged the truth. Nexus was in desperate need of success, and no current student had shown any signs of becoming a breakout talent. If Suho really did take first place, Nexus would gain the most from spotlight. His proposal in that sense was perfectly timed. Still, the director couldn't help but wonder what kind of person makes such a bold offer with that much confidence. Curious, she asked how much money he was expecting from the scholarship. Suho responded by asking about the rewards for becoming the top student. She explained that the prize included a full refund of tuition, and additional bonus of 30 million won, and the opportunity to immediately join the Nexus Guild. Suho nodded. It seemed fitting for the country's largest academy. But then, with a grin, he added that 300 million won would be even better. The number stunned Director Kim, but Suho kept going, saying that considering the advantages that came with being the top student and the scale of the academy, the amount was fair. For Nexus, 300 million wasn't much anyway. Deep down, Director Kim knew he wasn't wrong. Reluctantly, she agreed and told him that if he ranked first, she would pay him the 300 million. Later, Suho wandered around the campus. The more he explored, the more he realized just how enormous it was, bigger than most amusement parks. Once enrolled, he wouldn't be missing anything. The staff members showing him around chuckled proudly, explaining that Nexus was the largest academy in all of South Korea. Suho noticed the guide looked tired, and figured they'd probably been woken up just to give him a tour. Feeling slightly guilty, Suho thanked him for showing him around so late. The guide smiled, saying it was the least he could do for someone so important. Then, Suho spotted someone training alone on the playground. Curious, he asked if that person was a student. The guide nodded, saying that student trained every night at this hour, and was the most hardworking student in the academy. Suho was intrigued. The student's name was Daehan. The guy called out to him, reminding him to take care of his health, to which Daehan replied with a smile, saying he had to push himself harder since he was already in his 3rd year. Suho recognized him instantly. In his past life, he had teamed up with Dawn for raid missions. Back then, Daehan had been the nation's top tanker, famous for his unmatched endurance and defensive capabilities. It had been unfortunate when pure tankers lost their place in the meta over time, but now seeing Daehan wielding an axe instead of a shield, Suho realized Daehan still hadn't unlocked his real potential. This was a perfect opportunity. He could guide Daehan now and eventually recruit him into the Great Hunter Association. The guide introduced the two of them. After a brief greeting, Suho asked if Daehan intended to use the battle axe as his main weapon. Daehan confirmed it. Suho then asked why he chose that particular weapon. Daehan explained that since he aimed to be a frontline fighter, his instructors had suggested the axe, saying it matched well with his build. The guide chimed in, adding that few weapons could rival the battle axe in sheer destructive force. Suho asked if Daehan had only trained with the axe. Daehan admitted he had. He called himself a slow learner and said trying out multiple weapons felt like a waste of time. It had taken him 2 years just to get somewhat decent with the axe, and even now, he didn't feel particularly skilled with it. Suho silently analyzed the situation and understood the real problem. It wasn't that Daehan lacked effort, but that the axe simply didn't suit him. It wasn't a matter of dedication, it was a case of poor direction. If his progress hadn't improved early on, he should have switched weapons. Suho found it surprising that even the top academy in the country missed something this obvious. He suggested a different mindset. Since players would eventually receive stat adjustments, it made more sense to pick a weapon that felt natural to them. With skill correction effects, proficiency could rise quickly, but true performance in battle relied on knowledge and experience. In Daehan's case, the battle axe was clearly a mismatch. While it delivered heavy hits, the long cooldowns made users vulnerable, and considering Daehan's large frame, it became even harder to protect him effectively. When Daehan heard this, he was taken aback. He'd spent the last 3 years training with an axe. Suho acknowledged his dedication, but pointed out that Daehan's real strength might be in tanking. He advised Daehan to try using a kite shield on his left arm and a one-handed blunt weapon in his right hand. According to Suho, this setup would significantly enhance Daehan's overall combat effectiveness. Daehan hesitated. Switching roles right before the exam felt risky, especially since the test was happening the very next day. Suho then asked him to think about what truly forms the backbone of a raid party. While many believed it was the mage, in reality it was always the tank. The tank's job was to draw the enemy's focus and protect the team. To do that properly, a tank needed both a shield and a secondary weapon for crowd control. Suho's reasoning finally clicked with Daehan. Motivated by the insight, he decided to give it a shot. Suho was glad that Daehan didn't let doubt hold him back, and appreciated how quickly he could think and adapt. Suho wished him luck, and Daehan thanked him before heading off. Right after that, the guide explained that Director Kim had asked him to give Suho a tour, which is why he introduced him as a guest. But now the guide was curious. Was Suho actually an instructor? He seemed to know a lot about combat and contracts. Suho clarified that he was an instructor, though internally he realized it probably looked suspicious for someone without a license to know so much. He explained that he was more like a stakeholder. The guy nodded and mentioned he'd just received a call. The contract was ready, and it was time to return to the director's office. Then came a day of the hunter test. The area in front of the association building was packed with examinees, all armed with swords and ready to earn their hunter licenses. Everyone had been preparing relentlessly for this moment, sharpening their skills and reaching peak performance. Ironically, Suho, the same man who had cleared a gate all by himself, was in his worst condition. After finishing the test, Suho walked out, reflecting on the purpose behind it. It had been organized because of concerns over possible doping, but in his opinion, those measures didn't mean much. Most cheaters didn't use drugs, they used skill buffs. During the test, one woman in particular, and several others, had shown magic levels no one at level 5 should naturally have. The system then notified Suho that his magic sensing ability was far sharper than most. He had fully mastered the skill of magic detection. Thanks to that, Suho found it easier to notice oddities. Although nothing had been officially reported, he could already tell that many were cheating using buffs. He knew it was time to put an end to this. Looking at Chulman, Suho felt grateful to have at least one honest person around. As he walked in the hall where other candidates were discussing their tests, he couldn't help but feel like he'd unintentionally become a cheater himself. Chulman walked up and asked how the test went. Suho replied that he was confident he'd pass, but then asked why Chulman was there. Chulman explained that he was helping out since the association was always short-staffed. He'd also heard that this written test was the hardest one yet, but Suho's confidence was impressive. Suho responded that he believed he had solved it, and asked if he could bring something up. Chulman agreed, as long as it wasn't about the test itself. Suho said it was somewhat related. He pointed out that during the test, there hadn't been any checks for buffs and asked why. Chulman asked what he meant by buff checks. Suho explained that while the association did conduct urine and blood tests to prevent drug use, and confiscated personal items to prevent cheating through gear, they didn't seem a check for skill-based cheating. He suggested that using magic detection could help spot buffed individuals more effectively. Chulman appreciated the input and promised to look into it before the practical exam. Suho said he'd get ready for the next test. Before he left, Chulman stopped him and said he personally hoped Suho would do well and that they'd get to work together. He wished him luck on the practical, and Suho thanked him. 30 minutes later, at the site of the practical test, the announcer informed everyone that the exam had been delayed by 2 hours due to issues with the dive capsules. All candidates were directed to grab lunch at the cafeteria and wait either in the lounge or the training area, but Suho wasn't convinced. It felt like an excuse. He suspected that Brother Chulman had already started cracking down on those trying to cheat using buffs. Moving swiftly, just as he'd expected, with 1,200 candidates and a pass rate of under 10%, spotting cheaters could easily bring that rate down to 7%. Anyone who passed under those conditions would undoubtedly be top-tier talent. Suho decided to observe the other candidates to spot anyone who might be worth keeping an eye on. Just then, voices caught his attention. One man was challenging another to a match. The second guy snapped back, telling him to back off and stop picking fights, but the first guy clarified that he only wanted to spar, joking that the other was afraid his lack of skill would be exposed. Annoyed, the second man shoved him and told him to stay out of his face. The first man then raised a wooden sword and asked what would happen if he struck first. Before anything could escalate, Suho stepped in and blocked the wooden sword with his own, making the attacker pull back. The second man was stunned and asked Suho if he'd lost his mind, but Suho calmly said he'd handle it and told the man to stay out of it. The guy asked who Suho was. Was he some sort of officer? Suho simply said he was just another test taker, but warned that dealing with someone like this attacker would only cause unnecessary trouble, so it was best to leave it to him. The attacker then questioned why Suho was getting involved. Suho smiled, introduced himself, and offered to be the attacker's sparring partner since he was so eager for one. But the attacker wasn't impressed. He scoffed, saying he wouldn't waste his time sparring with someone weak like Suho. That word weak caught Suho off guard. The attacker claimed Suho just got lucky earlier and warned him not to get arrogant, ordering him to leave. But Suho turned the tables, asking if he was scared. The attacker, annoyed, asked what that was supposed to mean. Suho suggested they find out if it really was just luck, hinting that the attacker was too scared to test it. Provoked, the man accepted the challenge, hurling insults and calling Suho just another coward in the crowd. Suho agreed to the spar, but said they should get a supervisor's approval and use the designated sparring arena. With permission granted, both of them stepped into the training arena, drawing attention from nearby students. The referee reminded them they could only use training weapons provided by the association, and warned that the match would be stopped if things got out of control. As the match started, the attacker charged first, swinging his wooden sword. Suho blocked it with ease. The attacker leapt into the air, swinging downward, but Suho dodged effortlessly. Furious and surprised, the attacker threatened to tear Suho apart, but Suho stomped down on the man's wooden sword and taunted him, calling him pathetically weak. The insult pushed the attacker over the edge. This man, Parkyong, was known as a mad swordsman, obsessed with strength, always seeking out skilled opponents to fight. His thirst for power had turned him into a relentless combatant. Suho remembered how skilled Yang had been during their last encounter, and was surprised to see him among the same batch of test takers. He immediately realized that Yang needed to be stopped before repeating past mistakes. Without warning, Suho delivered a powerful kick that sent Yang flying. As he hit the ground, Suho mocked his earlier arrogance. Stunned, Yang questioned how Suho was so strong. Suho calmly warned him that charging in blindly wouldn't work, hinting that Yang had never faced someone as powerful as a level 10 before. Most of his previous opponents probably never got past level 5. Getting back up with a smirk, Yang admitted Suho seemed too calm and announced he'd go all out. Suho welcomed it. Yang unleashed a barrage of strikes, but Suho dodged them effortlessly with just one hand on his sword. The intensity of Yang's attacks had definitely increased, and Suho acknowledged the added weight behind him. Then, Yang went all in, using his signature dragon sword technique. A flash of blinding light erupted as the swords clashed. Yang thought he had finally landed a decisive hit and began to celebrate, but when the light faded, Suho was still standing, completely unharmed. He blocked the attack. Shocked, Yang trembled and demanded an explanation. Suho smirked and said the attack was too slow. In reality, Yang had only managed a basic version of the dragon sword technique. Without a hunter's license, it was impossible to master the real thing. Enraged by the humiliation, Yang charged again, but Suho dodged every attack with ease. At one point, Suho dropped into a crouch, baiting Yang into one last reckless charge. Just as Yang shouted that the match was over, Suho landed a powerful upward strike to his chin, knocking him out cold. Yang hit the ground, defeated and dazed, struggling to understand what had happened. Suho calmly repeated that his attacks were simply too slow. Though Yang was seething, all he could do was lie there, muttering Suho's name under his breath. Watching this, Suho realized that Yang's obsession would now revolve entirely around defeating him, ignoring everyone else in the process. With that distraction taken care of, Suho figured the testing center might finally quiet down. Meanwhile, the supervisor who had been observing everything were left stunned, snapping them out of their daze. Suho casually spoke up, reporting that he'd accidentally knocked out Parkyong and asked them to take care of him. In the next scene, Suho sat inside a room filled with various machines. Looking around, he noticed there were more skilled individuals present than before, probably anti-doping inspectors disguised as technicians. As the room grew noisy, Suho became visibly irritated, clearly wishing they'd all just leave. A technician walked up to him and instructed him to lie down. He then explained how the emergency button worked in case anything fell off during the dive process. Suho confirmed he understood. Once the system powered up, Suho lay down, and cables were attached to both sides of his head. A system window appeared indicating that the Hunter Practical Test program had been activated. As Suho's consciousness connected to the simulation, the dive progress steadily climbed 5%, then 40%, then 77%, until it hit 100%. The connection was successful, and the healer class test scenario began. When Suho opened his eyes, he found himself in a different world. Right away, he could tell this test wasn't going to be easy, especially considering how few people passed the healer exam. In front of him were wounded individuals calling for help, and some were trapped under rubble. One girl in particular was desperately trying to lift a huge stone. As Suho took in the chaotic scene, he silently criticized the Hunter Association for being too ruthless with the scenario. The whole situation already felt traumatic. Before continuing, let's understand the context of the practical test. It's considered the centerpiece of the Hunter exam. The main goal is to evaluate how well a participant fits into their chosen class. Every year, the simulation scenarios change, and the criteria for passing also vary. Typically, these tests involve one-on-one fights or surviving waves of enemies. A participant's score depends on how long they last and how many opponents they defeat. But for healers, it's different. The focus isn't just on how strong their healing powers are. While healing ability matters, the most valued quality is sacrifice. Healers who put their own lives on the line to save others earn higher scores. As monsters began to approach, Suho reflected on the nature of the test. In this scenario, the healer is expected to die protecting the patient. The issue, his own stats were still active. Walking toward the monsters, he spotted a sword on the ground. Looking at it, he realized he'd have to take a serious beating before dying. Unlike the others, he questioned the logic of letting himself be beaten to death. Dying once had already been enough for him. Nearby, others screamed for help at the sight of the monsters, but Suho knew those screams were illusions. In reality, he was surrounded only by corpses. He approached a terrified girl and asked if she was okay. Shaking, the girl warned that the monsters would return and they had to run, but Suho knew the real mission. He had to protect her until the end. Reassuring her, he promised that the rescue team would come and that he'd keep her safe until then. With resolve, he stood his ground, ready to fight the oncoming monsters. Back in the observation room, players started exiting the simulation pods one by one. One of them stepped out, thinking he could have done better. A woman thanked him for his efforts and instructed him to gather his belongings and head outside. She then moved to another pod and checked the screen. It displayed the details of a participant, Kang Jin-young, archer class, with a recorded time of 9 minutes and 4 seconds. She commented that this season's scores were particularly low due to the test difficulty. Curious, she asked Director Shin how long Suho had been inside. Shin replied, 30 minutes. Shocked, she repeated the number, unable to believe it was that long. Rushing over to Suho's machine, she checked the display herself. 30 minutes. Still in disbelief, she asked if Suho was a warrior. Shin corrected her, saying Suho was a healer. Refusing to believe it, she accused him of lying, but Shin pointed to the sword Suho had been holding and urged her to look closely. Together, they reviewed the simulation footage. Watching Suho in action, the woman asked again if he was really a healer. Impressed by his combat ability, she wondered aloud if he might be disqualified for not dying. But Director Shin clarified there was no rule requiring death. The test's real purpose was to protect the patient until the end. She nodded in agreement. Shin explained further. Suho was meeting all the conditions. He never abandoned the patient, fought near her, and continued healing her throughout. He was risking his life to protect her. As long as all conditions were met, disqualification wasn't an option. Hearing that, the woman concluded that the top score for this exam had already been determined. Meanwhile, Suho was still battling inside the simulation. With incredible skill, he sliced through the monsters in a single blow. But even after his victory, Suho felt it wasn't enough. He needed to be faster. As more monsters appeared, he eliminated them one after another, showing unwavering focus. Eventually, he wiped them all out. A system message popped up. Your understanding of the skill footplay is very high. Congratulations, you've mastered footplay. Suho read the message and realized that although this was a simulation since it was based on real-world mechanics, the system could still recognize his physical control. The system acknowledged that he was directly controlling his body, making it possible to master physical skills, that is even here. Though the experience gained was less than in real combat, it was still a great way to train. In addition to swordsmanship, he had picked up various skills and upgraded all basic sword techniques to a rank. There were no experience points or item rewards, but the results were still satisfying. If he could eventually raise all his sword skills to a rank or higher, he might be able to develop a technique like Parkyong's dragon sword technique. Another message appeared. Great achievement. Your understanding of swordsmanship surpasses everyone else's. The system is impressed by your unique style and wishes to register it. Would you like to create a new swordsmanship skill by combining your basic sword techniques and footplay? Suho smiled, finally ready to create his own style. Guardian sword. A confirmation window appeared, asking if that would be the official name. Suho confirmed. Another message congratulated him for his supreme mastery and recognized the creation of a new unique swordsmanship skill, Guardian Sword S. This new ability boosted the effects of all his sword and footwork skills by 50%. As a reward for this great achievement, the system awarded him 10 bonus stat points and expressed its hope that Suho would continue walking the path of the sword. A final message confirmed he had unlocked Sword Mastery S, a privilege granted only to those with deep understanding of swordsmanship. This lifted all restrictions on learning and using sword techniques, enhanced all sword-related abilities by another 50%, and removed any limitations tied to sword use. Suho quietly thought back to his past life. Back then, it had taken him over 10 years to reach this level of skill. But now, thanks to the knowledge he carried from that life, he had progressed much faster. He recognized how much his value had grown. Turning his focus to the exam, he recalled that the number of monsters was predetermined, and he couldn't help but wonder how much effort had gone into preparing the whole thing. With all his objectives completed, only 2 paths remained: either die at the hands of the monsters, or wipe them all out. Elsewhere, the supervisors watching the live footage were left speechless. They couldn't believe what they had just witnessed. For the first time in the history of practical exams, someone had defeated every single monster. They were in awe, not just of his combat prowess, but also because he had successfully healed the patient. One examiner even joked that they didn't need to bother checking the rankings. The winner was clear. A few days later, the scene shifted to the Hexagon Guild's headquarters. A confident guild member declared that their student, Kian, would surely be this year's top scorer. Another member agreed, proud of the effort they'd poured into his training. But then, someone noticed a congratulatory letter. As it was read aloud, confusion spread. Kian wasn't the top scorer after all. The name on the letter was On Suho. Everyone was stunned. The atmosphere immediately shifted, tense and confused as someone asked where Kian was. At that moment, the guildmaster received a call, and the scene changed again. Suho was now on a call with the team leader. The leader apologized for the late congratulations, explaining he'd been swamped with work, but he made sure to praise Suho for earning the highest score. He admitted he hadn't expected such consistency from him. Suho responded humbly, saying it was all thanks to the team leader, though the leader quickly deflected the credit, saying Suho's achievements were entirely his own doing. He also pointed out that Suho's exceptional performance had helped expose a number of cheaters who were illegally boosting their skills. This would lead to tighter rules in future exams, which he saw as a positive outcome. Then the team leader cautiously brought up a question. Was Suho still interested in joining the Great Hunter Association? Suho replied that although he might stay with the guild a bit longer, his ultimate goal hadn't changed. He still intended to join the association. The team leader appreciated his clear answer and said he'd reach out once the recruitment or testing schedule was ready. Suho agreed with a smile. Before ending the call, the leader reminded Suho to eat properly and look after his health, and Suho returned the same kind words. After the call ended, the team leader glanced down at something in his hand and quietly reminded himself to eat too. Back on Suho's side, he paused for a moment. Something about the leader's tone lingering in his mind. It fell off. He wondered if everything was all right. Just then, his phone rang again. Suho checked the caller ID and seemed to know who it was. He answered and introduced himself. The caller was Kim Soo, who congratulated him on his success and confirmed that payment had already been sent according to their agreement. Suho acknowledged her efficiency, praising how professional her large guild was. Then came her proposal. She invited Suho to join the Nexus Guild, promising benefits better than anything other guilds could offer. Curious, Suho asked how far they were willing to go. Kim Soo assured him that she'd do everything possible to match his expectations. As a top student and scholarship recipient, she said adjusting the contract terms would be no problem. She even suggested meeting in person to finalize the deal. Suho, however, politely declined for now, mentioning he had personal plans that day. He promised to review his schedule and get back to Earth soon. Still, he did hint that considering he was a Nexus scholarship recipient, it would be logical to join Nexus over any other guild. Kim Soo was overjoyed by his response. Her excitement was so intense that even her co-workers nearby noticed. She begged him not to sign anything with another guild in the meantime. Amused by her enthusiasm, Suho chuckled and agreed to meet soon. As the call ended, Suho smiled, still hearing the echo of her thrilled voice. At that moment, the taxi driver let him know they had arrived. Suho thanked him and stepped out. Now standing outside, Suho reflected on everything that had happened. He had cleared the test, secured his license, and received the payment. The next chapter of his journey was right in front of him. With quiet determination, he moved forward, ready to begin farming. At Lighthouse General Market, Suho checked his phone and thought about how he had quickly gathered everything he needed. Now, the only thing left was to buy a weapon. With that goal, he arrived at a small, tucked-away shop, deliberately avoiding the crowded ones since he wasn't sure they'd have what he was looking for. As he stood outside, he wondered if his quiet place might hold the right weapon. Stepping inside, Suho greeted the shopkeeper, who asked what he needed. Suho explained that he had just become a hunter and was looking for a lightweight weapon. The shopkeeper directed him toward a section with cheaper items. When Suho glanced at them, he noticed thick layers of dust and realized most low-grade weapons came without verified data. But that didn't mean every unverified weapon was useless. Some weapons needed to go through a process called liberation before revealing their true potential. These special weapons usually gave off a subtle aura, a kind of signal, though most players in places like this wouldn't recognize it. Suho picked up one of the weapons and activated his magic detection skill. A faint smile appeared on his face. He had found it. After walking out with the weapon, Suho thought to himself that if the owner ever found out the spear's true worth, he'd regret letting it go so cheaply. But for now, it was time to begin. Suho closed his eyes, focused, and began pouring his magical energy into the weapon. The spear absorbed his power at a fast pace, draining his energy quickly. Realizing how much it was taking out of him, Suho stopped and collapsed to the ground, completely exhausted. He understood that if he'd pushed just a bit more, he might have passed out from magic depletion. To awaken the weapon, he needed a magic stat of at least 100. Though he couldn't use it yet, he knew it would become a powerful asset in the future. He promised himself he'd level up fast and unlock its full potential soon. Meanwhile, inside the PBS building, reporter Jinwei received a phone call from Suho. Suho introduced himself and confirmed that he was the top scorer in the recent Hunter test. He also revealed that he had personally handled the unprecedented gate incident at Syndrome Station all by himself. Jinwei was shocked by the revelation, taking a moment to silently process the fact that Suho had cleared such a dangerous gate even before officially becoming a licensed hunter. In Jinwei's eyes, Suho was already a monster. When Jinwei asked why Suho had reached out to him directly, Suho explained that he had found Jinwei's blog during a search. He mentioned that while he knew about Jinwei's privileged upbringing, he respected Jinwei's decision to pursue journalism out of genuine interest. Suho shared that he had big plans and would soon become a source of major headlines. He then proposed that Jinwei work as his exclusive reporter. Jinwei was skeptical, wondering if Suho was just trying to tie down a wealthy journalist as his subordinate. Internally, he dismissed Suho as just another ambitious oddball with delusions of grandeur. Even though he understood what Suho was suggesting, Jinwei was uncomfortable with the idea. He admitted he craved exclusives, but he had no desire to work under anyone. Suho clarified that he wasn't looking for a subordinate, but a reliable partner. Jinwei responded bluntly, suggesting that Suho's offer seemed like a tactic to boost his own market value before joining a guild. Suho admitted there was some truth to that, but not entirely. He wasn't doing this to increase his worth, but to gain fame. His ultimate goal was to become a civil servant. Jinwei was caught off guard. Did Suho mean joining the Hunter Association? The idea of chasing fame to become a public official seemed absurd to him, but Suho was serious. He wanted to work in the field as part of the Hunter Association. That made Jinwei question his background. Was Suho another rich kid treating hunter work as a side quest? Suho revealed he was actually a gate orphan, and that past was what drove him toward public service. It shaped his purpose in life to conquer gates. As Jinwei glanced at his laptop, he questioned whether Suho was really being serious. With so many strange people emerging lately, it was getting hard to tell, but in the end, he decided it didn't matter much. He acknowledged Suho's point of view, but declined the offer. He preferred choosing his own stories to cover. Still, Suho didn't give up. He suggested a bet. Curious, Jinwei asked what kind. Suho proposed to earn Jinwei's trust by proving himself as a hunter. He announced he would attempt to clear the Tower of Challenge alone that very day. Jinwei was stunned. That tower was infamous. Clearing it was considered impossible even for a full party. Doing it solo sounded downright insane, but Suho was confident that if he pulled it off, it would be enough to convince Jinwei. If he succeeded, he wanted Jinwei to become his personal and exclusive reporter. Suho remembered the Jinwei from his past life, a top-tier broadcaster from PBS, famous for his pride and elite background. He'd gained popularity as a journalist who never took requests. Yet, in Suho's previous life, they had teamed up many times thanks to Jinwei's sharp reporting and rare influence over public opinion. But that same brilliance made him dangerous to others, like a thorn, always in someone's side. Eventually, Jinwei got caught up in political conflicts, was forced into early retirement, and eventually disappeared from the scene. This time, Suho silently vowed to prevent that fate. During the call, Suho made his proposal. If he could conquer the Tower of Challenge solo, Jinwei had to become his personal reporter. Though stunned, Jinwei agreed. If Suho truly managed to do it, Jinwei promised he'd support him with everything he had as a journalist. The call ended with Suho confidently declaring, it was time to begin. After the call, Jinwei starts feeling irritated, thinking Suho is seriously driving him nuts. He keeps dwelling on Suho's sudden and unexpected request, confused about where it even came from. Even though he's clearly annoyed, he doesn't completely hate the idea. Something about the proposal feels genuine, and Suho doesn't seem like the type to scam anyone. Caught between frustration and curiosity, Jinwei mutters to himself that he's really losing it. Still, he shrugs it off, thinking it's a harmless gamble. If it turns out real, great. If not, no big deal. The scene shifts to the Tower of Challenge. Suho stands at the entrance showing his hunter license to the gatekeeper. The man notices Suho came alone and warns him. Solo entry is allowed, but it's risky. Judging by Suho's license number, he assumes Suho just passed his test. The gatekeeper suggests teaming up since even the lower levels often lead to injuries or worse. But Suho insists on going in alone. Respecting his choice, the man informs him of the 70,001 entry fee, and tells him to pay once he gets the invoice. Suho nods and thanks him. As he steps forward, the gatekeeper shouts after him to be careful and retreat if things get too dangerous. Suho simply gives a nod and walks inside. While walking, Suho reflects on the Tower Challenge. It's widely known as a training ground for players below level 20. This public gate is government-maintained and meant to help players grow stronger. Now that his level has been reset, there's no better place to start over. As he pushes the door open and steps in, the system immediately announces his entry. It tells him that he can give up any time, and if he declares withdrawal, he'll be teleported back to the entrance instantly. Suho summons his sword just as the system triggers the beginning of the first floor challenge. A slime monster appears and launches an attack. While fighting, Suho notices the monster's large size and surprising speed, which momentarily catches him off guard. Despite being just a level 1 creature with barely any attack power, its movements are annoying, and getting stuck with it could slow him down. Wanted to finish it quickly, Suho drives his sword through the slime's core, destroying it. But then he realizes something. This slime can multiply. That irritating trait means that when its core splits, it regenerates into several smaller versions. Even though there's a limit to how much they can divide, there's still a threat. This regenerative ability is one reason why most players enter the tower in parties. Monsters usually show up in groups on almost every floor. Not wasting time, Suho begins wiping out the multiplying slimes. He leaps into the air, stabs one mid-jump, and then hurls his sword to take down another. As he falls, a slime swings its tentacle at him. Suho grabs at mid-air, preventing a hard fall, and uses that grip to catapult himself upward with clean and precise strikes. He slashes through the tentacles and clears the rest of the enemies. The system notifies him that he's conquered the first floor, and asks if he wants to move on. Suho looks up, full of resolve. With 48 more floors to go, there's no time to waste. The system then signals the start of the second floor challenge. Suho thinks back to the Tower of Challenge, remembering that in his past life, the highest official record reached was the 48th floor. At present, the record only goes up to the 29th floor, both milestones achieved through party play. Typically, challengers enter the tower in groups, and the number of participants determines the difficulty level. The more people in a party, the less experience each person earns, but it's a safer way to progress. Most hunters aiming for top records form parties of level 20 members. With these thoughts in mind, Suho clears the 18th floor and looks upward, realizing he doesn't need to follow the usual methods. Without hesitation, he accepts the challenge for the 19th floor, activating the next stage. Unlike the earlier levels filled with multiple enemies, this floor has only a single powerful monster. While that makes the opponent stronger, it also means that defeating it alone is enough to pass the stage. As soon as the monster appears, Suho charges in and defeats it with a single sword strike. The system announces the completion of the 19th floor and gives him the option to proceed to the 20th. Instead, Suho decides to pause the challenge and examines the monster's body. He notices something strange. Unlike other defeated monsters that vanish immediately, this one leaves behind a red gain. It's a clear hint from the tower that there's something more to uncover. Suho retrieves an item from the remains, realizing it has a specific purpose, even though it can't be used on its own. Using his magic detection ability, he finds a hidden space linked to the Red Gate. This hidden area turns out to be the subspace fortress of the Fortress King, Jiang Pyong. This subspace is unique because, unlike others created using items, it allows living beings to enter and leave freely. Inside, Suho finds himself in a place that looks like a cave. A glowing object appears, and the system informs him that the fortress's previous owner is dead. Suho is asked if he wants to take ownership. He accepts and grabs the glowing object, which begins to fuse with his body. The system confirms that Suho is now the new master of the subspace fortress, which is no longer just an item. It has become a skill bound to him permanently. The system also explains that the appearance of the fortress will change depending on Suho's magical power. The space begins to shift. What was once a cave transforms into a fully furnished room. Impressed, Suho realizes the space is more sophisticated than he expected. Its size expands with his magical strength, and even adapts to his preferences. He feels relieved that he stopped Jiang Pyong-ho from getting his hands on this power. That man had once used the fortress to store everything from drugs and stolen artifacts to kidnapped people. Remembering the horror of those sleepless nights caused by such crimes fills Suho with disgust. But now, with the fortress in his hands, he knows such darkness won't repeat. By stopping the rise of the Fortress King and gaining a powerful personal base, Suho feels he scored a massive win. With newfound resolve, he gets ready to keep moving forward. Jinwei was scrolling through his phone reading an article with growing interest. He noticed that a lot of students had started gravitating toward Nexus lately. Suho had once talked about wanting to join the Great Hunter Association, but this exclusive media coverage suggested that Nexus was confident Suho would end up with them. Jinwei felt uncertain. Only time would tell. Still, he couldn't stop thinking about how many floors Suho had already cleared. Right then, a system alert popped up. The 30th floor had just been conquered. The Tower of Challenge record had been shattered, and someone was already advancing to the 31st floor. The nearby crowd went silent in disbelief. Murmur spread. Was a new record, a team raid, or something even more insane? Their shock deepened when the system immediately announced the 31st floor had also been cleared. Just moments after it began, Jinwei froze. If this really was Suho, then he'd completely misjudged him. Until now, Jinwei had chalked up Suho wins to luck and theatrics. But if this insane pace was real, then Suho was a rival he'd be stuck competing with for a long time. Inside the Hunter Association, Director Kim heard the news and was visibly rattled. She quickly confirmed the reports. Suho was actually smashing records live. Realizing Suho's value, she decided they had to make an offer, so tempting it couldn't be refused. She ordered her team to alert the president and office manager, then head straight to headquarters. Meanwhile, the system made Chulman rapid rise through the Tower of Challenge was something the world had never seen. If Suho truly wanted to join the association, this was a once-in-a-generation talent. Just then, Chulman's phone rang. It was the vice president of the association. Curious, Chman picked up. The VP asked where he was. Upon hearing that Chulman was near the tower in Pango, he jumped on the opportunity. He told Chulman to bring Suho in. Chulman lit up, thinking he'd been given the chance to recruit Suho, but the VP quickly shut that idea down. He didn't want a recruitment, just a photo of Suho with the association president. Then he hung up, leaving Chulman stunned and bitter. He thought to himself, how these power-hungry executives were exactly why the public saw them as corrupt and incompetent. In his mind, only hunters deserve to be in charge of the association. He stared at the tower, trying to think of a way to convince Suho to come in. Inside the tower, Suho had just cleared the 48th floor, updating the tower record again. Exhaustion was starting to weigh him down. Constantly pushing forward was draining. He wondered when this madness would finally end. Still, when he opened his status window, his spirits lifted. Hitting level 39 felt like a real reward. With every floor cleared, he earned 5 bonus stat points, and each one felt like a gift. Knowing the system inside out made it feel like he was building a game character, a second self, and honestly, it was kind of fun. With his stats set, Suho prepared for the final challenge. The 49th floor had begun. A glowing crystal appeared in front of him, and from it emerged the final boss, a tower dragon. Level 49. Suho stared at it, immediately recognizing how broken this thing was. Even without pure blood traits, just being a dragonborn made it absurdly powerful. It made him question if this floor was ever even meant to be beaten, but Suho knew why he was here. He wasn't going to hesitate. Gritting his teeth, sword in hand, he charged at the final boss with full resolve, ready to end this. Suho moved in to confront the dragon, ready to attack. In response, the dragon launched its own assault, forcing Suho to leap into the air to evade it. While airborne, he quickly noticed something important. For a beast of its enormous size, the dragon was shockingly fast. Suddenly, a dark aura leaked from its claws, creating a powerful pulling force that dragged Suho straight toward its jaws. Right before he was sucked in, Suho grabbed the dragon's mouth, hoisted himself over its head, and slammed his sword down with all his strength. The dragon roared furiously and tossed its head so violently that Suho was flung away, forcing him to retreat to safety. As he caught his breath, Suho realized something concerning. His strongest strike hadn't even left a scratch. All he had managed to do was annoy the creature. The dragon then smashed the ground with overwhelming power, sending deep cracks tearing through the floor. Suho ducked behind a large rock, silently grateful for his high stats. Without them, the shockwave would have killed him instantly. He quickly understood that although the dragon's level wasn't unbelievably high, its natural traits made its body absurdly durable. Standard attacks were useless. He needed to target its weak point, the reverse scale. Since this dragon wasn't level 100 yet, it likely couldn't completely hide that scale. After scanning its body, Suho spotted the vulnerable point near its tail. Without wasting a second, he charged in and struck the rock-hard scale with all his might. The dragon howled in agony, and a system notification appeared. The tower dragon had entered a rage after its weakness was hit. Suho left his sword lodged deep in the reverse scale, knowing the fight wouldn't end quickly. Dragging this battle out would only make it more dangerous. He channeled even more power, pushing the blade deeper. Enraged, the dragon unleashed its fear-based ability. Suho's body froze as he slipped into a hallucination state. The system confirmed he had fallen under fear. He tried to cure himself, but the system informed him that such a high-level fear couldn't be removed. Before the dragon could crush him with its tail, Suho opened the entrance to his subspace and vanished inside. He immediately chugged a purification potion. The system confirmed the potion's effects as the hallucinations vanished. Relieved, he reminded himself that only people he allowed could enter this subspace. He had bought the potion casually from the general market, unaware that he would need it so soon. The fight was far more intense than he had expected. Even after removing the fear status once, he wouldn't get immediate resistance, and cure spells were useless. That meant he would have to repeatedly retreat into his subspace and rely on purification potions, something clearly unsustainable. He needed another plan. Searching through his inventory, he briefly considered calling the mad pulverization scholar. Before he could decide, the system notified him that he had learned a basic combination formula from a skill book, and a combination jar appeared. Understanding its significance, he placed 3 unusual items into the jar: the unknown thief's socks, the unknown minstrel's instrument, and the unknown cleaner's broom. The jar began its fusion process. Suho knew that combinations using absolute formulas always succeeded. Many so-called trash items actually held hidden value. The process ended successfully. A rare treasure had been created. First Mumu, a ring formed from a basic level formula. Suho also gained 10 bonus stat points for creating a first-ever item. He understood that first-time items were usually S grade or above, and this one was S+ because it was a growth-type item. He equipped the ring, and the system instantly bound it to him. Suho remembered that in his previous life, he had missed the chance to obtain first Mumu because the mad pulverization scholar discovered it first and made the recipe public. This time, Suho had claimed it for himself. With the extra stats, he opened his status window and added 4 points to his magic stat, raising it to 100. The system congratulated him. His magic stat had turned red, an achievement he had never reached before level 50. Earlier, he had thought purple status would take forever, but now, it felt fully achievable. Purple required 700 points. Still a long journey, but he was confident he could reach it. After finishing his stat allocation, Suho summoned his familiar old spear and began infusing it with magic. The weapon absorbed power at an incredible rate. Once the required amount was reached, The system acknowledged the successful awakening. The spear had transformed, it was now the Shadow Spear. Round 2 was about to begin. The system revealed the weapon's origins. It was one of the Shadow Lord's treasures, forged from the bones of a shadow beast, and it had acknowledged Suho as its first awakener. The spear could now be summoned from his shadow, and regenerated using magic and shadow energy. Suho understood the weapon's value immediately. Just as Pyong had the subspace fortress, the Shadow Lord, a monarch-level being, had wielded this spear. If that entity existed within the gate, Suho was now holding its signature weapon. He felt relieved he had secured it before anyone dangerous could claim it. Time to test it. He summoned the spear again, appreciating its convenience. Since he couldn't attack from within his subspace fortress, he would need to step out and hit the reverse scale while the dragon slept. Suho exited the subspace and climbed to a rocky ledge overlooking the beast. Raising the shadow spear, he hurled it straight into the stone embedded in the dragon's tail. The spear pierced through, and the dragon writhed in pain. Suho jumped down as the system announced the dragon had entered another enraged state. It unleashed dragon fear, but Suho instantly retreated back into subspace, avoiding all status effects. His hit-and-run tactics continued. Suho struck repeatedly, retreating each time. The process took longer than expected, but soon the reverse scale's durability dropped under 10%. It wasn't completely destroyed, but it had become too weak to protect the dragon. Stealth would no longer work. Suho abandoned subtlety and went for a full assault. Bursting from the fortress, he launched himself into the air and drove the shadow spear into the dragon's eye. The impact shook the entire area. Suho was thrown back, but the enraged dragon was relentless. As it searched for him, Suho seized the moment, circling behind and rushing for the tail. The dragon used dragon fear again, but Suho shattered the stone first. The system confirmed it. The reverse scale was destroyed, and the dragon's power drained rapidly. Suho took a purification potion and surged into the air for the finishing blow. With a clean slash across the throat, the dragon collapsed. The battle had finally ended. The system declared that Suho had cleared the 49th floor and set a new record for the Tower of Challenge. He received 10 bonus stat points, and more rewards began pouring in. Lying on the ground, he processed the achievement. He had conquered the entire tower, something neither past nor present versions of himself had ever done. For reaching level 40, he gained a new skill, Healing Spirit, an area of effect healing ability that, once mastered, could cover an entire battlefield. The evaluation wasn't done yet. Recognizing the difficulty of his feat, the system rewarded him with dragon blood. Suho was shocked. This was the signature power of Yoma, the monster player. So this was where Yoma had obtained it from the Dragon Mountains. The system explained that inheriting dragon blood granted a dragon's power depending on how far the user pushed themselves. Before Suho could summon the Shadow Spear again, the system alerted him. The weapon was reacting to the Tower Dragon's shadow. It absorbed the shadow entirely, undergoing another transformation, Shadow Spear Plus. A hidden function called Shadow Devour, not even listed in the original description, had grown stronger. Part of the weapon's consciousness had awakened. Suho checked the updated stats and was stunned. Shadow Binding and Shadow Regeneration had both risen from A rank to S rank. Shadow Binding could now rip out a target's shadow and immobilize them, while Shadow Fangs tore the shadow apart, causing continuous bleed damage. Growth-type weapons truly exceeded normal equipment. Satisfied, Suho prepared to leave, but something on the ground caught his attention, a massive fang. The system identified it as a mighty dragon's fang capable of inflicting an incurable debuff that nullified all recovery. Suho was stunned again. He had obtained a dragon byproduct, something believed to be almost impossible to secure. It confirmed that the Tower Dragon had been a pure blood dragon, which naturally dropped materials. This entire battle had been a jackpot. With everything collected, Suho finally turned to go, certain that reporter Jinwei would be waiting for him outside.